Do you want to be able to easily solo tormented bosses? Or push the highest pits? You can do that with Firebolt, but first you need to become immortal. And in this video I'll show you how. You can find a link to my full written guide in the description. Today we're going to be looking at the Firebolt starter variant, which is the most basic immortal variant. So in order to become immortal we need to have Flame Shield up permanently, and to do that you need the cooldown to be shorter than the duration. And to achieve that we need cooldown reduction to reduce the cooldown, and also plus Flame Shield ranks and Flame Shield duration tempers to increase the duration. We also rely on the Hectic aspect, which reduces one of the active cooldowns after casting 5 basic skills, and since we're spamming Firebolt all the time, it means that after 5 casts of those, it will reduce the cooldown by another 3 seconds if you have it on Amulet, or 2 seconds if you have it on Pants. So that means, cooldown reduction, Flame Shield duration, and Flame Shield ranks, and attack speed. Because if you attack faster, you're gonna also gain cooldown reduction from Hectic faster. So on my ult, this is my level 80 ult that I just leveled recently. I'm still not quite immortal, as you can see. So the cooldown, there's still a tiny bit of cooldown left after the Flame Shield runs out. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna see what it takes to make this character immortal. And after we've done that, we're gonna try and solo Tormented Duriel. Over the past few days, I've saved up a lot of the gear that you can use for this. And this is all pretty common stuff. No like multiple greater affixes or anything super rare. Nothing like that. But do keep in mind that you will need some masterworking to be able to become immortal. You will need, I think, at least like 4 out of 12 masterworking on everything, which takes 1000 of the site. And that's a material you can only get from doing the pit. And if you have very low rolls on your gear, you might need to be able to masterwork a bit further than rank 4, which will require Ingolith, which you can only get from tier 31 and above. I'll go through every slot and tell you which stats are required and which stats you would like to have. Starting with Helm, you need to have cooldown reduction and the Flame Shield duration temper. The other stats that are nice to have are Intelligence is the main one, and the last stat doesn't really matter, but probably Max Life or Lucky Hit Chance or Armor or Resistances if you're not capped on those. And if you have a Shaco, you want to use that, because it not only has cooldown reduction, but it also gives you +4 ranks to all skills. Most importantly, Flame Shield and Firebolt. So this not only gives you about the same duration, maybe slightly more than a Legendary Helm, but also it gives you 4 Firebolt ranks, which adds a lot of damage. So if you have a Shaco, you can use that, but if not, you can just use a Legendary Helm with cooldown reduction and Flame Shield duration temper. Now, if you don't find a helm that already has cooldown reduction, you can enchant it at the enchanter. But ideally you find one with cooldown reduction, because cooldown reduction is a pretty rare affix to find at the enchanter. So it might take you a lot of gold and angel breath to be able to roll it. And you always want to temper before you enchant, because if you don't hit the required tempers, you can't really use that item. So here I have a few ones with cooldown reduction, so we can try and temper those. Oh, look at that, we got the perfect Flame Shield duration roll on the first try. That's very lucky. Now the second temper doesn't really matter too much, but you want at least 1 chance to freeze on one of your items. So we can try that here. Got the slow. Now if you hit the low Flame Shield duration temper, if you have another helm, you can try and temper that, and you can just keep the one with the highest roll. And then we can also try to get the freeze, especially since I already have the Flame Shield duration on it with the max roll. Yeah, and we got it. It's the lowest roll, but that's fine. It's the cooldown reduction and the Flame Shield duration that is the most important here. On chest, you need plus Flame Shield rank, or you can also get plus defensive skills, because that also gives you Flame Shield ranks. But Flame Shield rank will give you 1 more, and you also need the Flame Shield duration temper. And the other stats that are nice to have are Intelligence, and similarly the third stat doesn't matter, but Max Life is useful, or Armor or Resistances if you aren't capped on those. And the second temper, like I said, doesn't really matter as long as you have one item with freeze. I already found a chest earlier with +3 flame shield and max flame shield duration roll, so I can keep using this. Now later on you're gonna equip raiment, but that requires more stats and more masterworking. So until then you're gonna have to keep using a legendary chest. And in the next part of this guide, we're going to look at exactly what it takes to be able to equip raiment. For the gloves, we're obviously using the Flame Weaver unique. The only stat here that actually helps with your flame shield uptime is attack speed. But for damage, the most important is the aspect percent and the Firebolt rank. If you find greater affix attack speed, that is a pretty big help towards being able to become immortal. So if you find something like this, that could be worth using, even though the aspect percentage is a bit lower. If you don't find greater affix gloves, you can maybe look for something like this with a high aspect percentage and high roll of attack speed, and also ideally the +3 firebolt. But even if this was, +2 firebolt, it would still be a pretty good flame weaver to use. I'm going to swap these with the ones I already have. On legs, the only required stat is the flame shield duration temper. But you can also get plus Firebolt ranks, which is really good for damage, and you also want intelligence if possible. And the last stat doesn't really matter. The second temper doesn't matter as long as you have at least one freeze. You can, of course, find plus Firebolt ranks on legs, but you can also find plus basic skills, and the GA basic skill compared to a natural Firebolt is the same. You can also, of course, find +2 Firebolt legs or +2 basic skills. But even if you don't find any of these, you could potentially also find like greater affix intelligence, and you could try and roll for the plus Firebolt skill. But even if you don't find that either, you could use +1 basic skills, or you could even use something like this, which doesn't have any Firebolt rank or basic skills at all. You can try and roll it if you want to. The most important thing here is just the flame shield duration temper. And this is a very low roll, but it's still better than nothing. But I'm just gonna keep rolling these because I already have better at 13. There's 13.5, so I could use this instead. Just roll. Just enchant away the poison resistance for intelligence, or if I'm really lucky, I could hit the +2 basic skills, for example. These legs would be, usable. For boots, the only requirement is the implicit has to be attacks reduce awaits cooldown by 1.5 seconds. And this is because we move only using teleport evade, because you have to keep casting Firebolt in order to stay immortal. So you need that implicit to be able to move around. The other stats, nothing is hard required. Ideally, you want intelligence at least, and a weight cooldown reduction. And you can also get roll freeze on boots if you are missing that. There we hit it. It doesn't really matter like the roll range on this one. Just and we got the freeze as well. Very lucky. So I'm gonna swap these for these because they have higher item powers. They're gonna give me a bit more armor. And then I might just keep the move speed, or I could roll the move speed to armor. Weapon, here the tempers are the most important, and they're also the hardest tempers to hit. So I recommend just rolling a lot of different weapons that you find, anything. Just any weapon with 2 of these 4 stats, intelligence, damage, vulnerable damage, and damage over time. Any weapon, doesn't matter if it's greater affix or not, just roll it. Just temper it. They're looking for permanent attack speed and chance for Firebolt double cast. I recommend just rolling weapons until you get a near max roll on both of these. Especially the chance for Firebolt projectiles to cast twice is probably the biggest damage stat that you can get from gear, because you can think of it as a multiplier for damage. So getting a high roll on that is way bigger than, getting a greater affix weapon. Now, if you do find, like greater affix weapons, you can of course also try and roll those. It's even better if you hit it on those. Oh, like this, 29.5, that's very good. Well, I got lucky. I hit quite good rolls on both of them on my only GA weapon here. But, even if you don't get that lucky, doesn't really matter. Just keep rolling any weapon you find. Okay, so I rolled 5 weapons before I hit this one. Now this one has, you know, the max chance for Firebolt projectiles to cast twice, and it also got the Pyromancer attack speed. And even though this has one greater affix on damage, I would actually probably use this over the greater affix one, just because of the 3% higher Firebolt chance to cast twice. You know, it doesn't need to be max, but just as high as it can, and then you can just keep rolling any new weapon you find. For focus, it's the same thing as for weapon. You just want to roll a lot of them until you get the high chance to cast Firebolt and Pyromancer attack speed. But on focus, you also need to have cooldown reduction and ideally a high roll. So it's good if you find one with cooldown reduction already on it. That's the only required stat together with the tempers. It's also nice to have intelligence and damage percentage. I have this 8% cooldown reduction. I have this 7.5% with intelligence. I think I'm going to try and roll this one first. That'll do. Now if only we can hit the attack speed as well. And there we go. For rings, the first thing is you need to have a Talrasha. The reason is that this unique ring has cooldown reduction, which regular rings cannot get. And you do need that cooldown reduction to be able to become immortal. So we need one of these. Now, ideally, obviously also greater affix cooldown reduction, but if you don't find those, you know, we can just find one with a 7% or as high as possible. And the aspect percentage here is also important, but only for damage. So when you're trying to become immortal, it's probably more important to have higher cooldown reduction. You can farm these rings from the boss down here. For the second ring, none of the stats are hard required, but you do want attack speed, Pyromancer attack speed, temper, and the lucky hit chance to make enemies vulnerable. And last stat, ideally intelligence. If you can find a greater affix attack speed ring with intelligence ideally, but also anything else like damage over time, for example, that would be great. But otherwise, I would recommend if you can find a ring with the chance to make enemies vulnerable affix on it already, because that is one that is very difficult to find from the enchanter. So you can find one with intelligence on it and roll for the attack speed from the enchanter, or you can find one with attack speed and roll the intelligence at the enchanter. You can also, if you don't find one with either attack speed or intelligence, you could just find one with, you know, a dead third stat and you can just roll attack speed on it. That would probably be better to save materials. But if you don't find that either, you can look for one with intelligence and a high attack speed roll on it, and then roll for the chance to make enemies vulnerable. And if you can't hit it at the enchanter, you can also play this aspect until you find a ring with this affix on it. And for the temper, you are really only looking for the pyromancy attack speed. The second temper is really not important at all. We should only prioritize the attack speed here. Alright, we got a 9.5, that's fine. Now we can roll this to get some attack speed. Attack speed isn't too hard to hit at the enchanter, so it's not too bothersome to roll. But yeah, the second temper, I think ideally it's the lucky hit chance to restore primary resource, which I was lucky enough to get. Alright, lastly, the neck. The only required stats here, I would say, are cooldown reduction, flame shield duration temper, and at least either attack speed or pyromancy attack speed. And the last stat ideally is plus ranks to glass cannon, but I would worry more about the other 4 stats before worrying about getting one with glass cannon. If you have high cooldown reduction rolls on all your other pieces, or you are lucky and get some crits, you might get away with something like 6.5% cooldown reduction, and if it already has attack speed, then you can roll for glass cannon as the third stat. But also be aware that hitting glass cannon on the enchanter is extremely low chance, so you might end up spending, you know, a lot of gold and a lot of angel breath to be able to roll it. So I wouldn't worry too much about the third stat until you have a very good neck overall. and I'll just worry about the other 4. So I already have attack speed, cooldown reduction, and flame shield duration on my previous neck, but I'm missing the Pyromancer attack speed, and also obviously I would like a better 3rd stat than the elemental dominance, because that one does nothing for me. So I'm gonna try and roll a couple of these necks. I'm gonna go with the one with 8% cooldown reduction, and we're gonna go for the flame shield duration. That's the most important temper. And we got the 15%, very lucky. And the second one, Pyroman's attack speed, ideally. Now, if you don't hit Pyroman's attack speed, both fire damage and fire damage over time are also useful. So if you have, only 1 left or something, you could try or you could just keep that if you want. But here we go with the Pyroman's attack speed. I'm gonna try and enchant the lightning resistance to attack speed as well. I've got a low roll, but that's fine. That's still a pretty decent upgrade compared to what I have. So I can swap that. Okay, now I'm just gonna enchant the rest of my pieces that I didn't enchant yet. So here, I don't really care. This one already was enchanted. This one I already did. This one is fine as this. So here I'm gonna roll the max life to vulnerable damage. Could also do fire damage or damage over time. Neck already did, ring already did, and focus. I'm gonna roll the max life to ideally damage percentage, or I can do. I already got it. Next step is to masterwork everything to rank 4. I'm not gonna care what I hit. But of course, ideally, you want to hit the important stats that we already talked about: cooldown reduction, flame shield duration, attack speed. Look at there. Basic skill is more damage, so that's fine. Boots, there's nothing too good to hit. Vulnerable damage. Pyroman's attack speed is fine. Resource generation, pretty useless. Pretty useless. And last one, cooldown reduction. That is nice. Alright. For the sockets, if you are immortal, you can obviously socket full damage. I don't have full slots yet, but yeah, lastly I need to swap all the aspects. So I play Hectic on Amulet. On rings, since I already have the lucky hit chance to make enemies vulnerable, I'm gonna play the Shredding Blade here. Focus, I do Rapid. On weapon, I do Moonrise. It already had Moonrise, but I have a better one. So I'll do that. Boots, I do Exploiters. Here I'm gonna do Concussive. Chest. Do Fortune. Oh, I can't do Fortune there, I have to do Protector. And then Fortune on Head. Right, there we go. Fortune. Oh, this was meant to be protecting. Alright, let's check if we are immortal. So the way you can check this easily is you can just go outside of town. Make sure you cast Firebolt always. Stand still and check if we get Flame Shield back in time. Now, if it doesn't reset in time, make sure you double check everything, especially the Hectagon Amulet is important. And the Moonrise and Rapid, most likely. You can also refer to my guide. It has recommended stat requirements so you can compare your stats to those. I'll do that right here. My guide says 4.5 second flame shield duration, mine is 4.5 with 37% cooldown reduction, which I have, and 127.8% total attack speed. Now the total attack speed, you can read at the bottom of my guide, there's a section on attack speed. It explains it in depth there, but in short, you have to add this attack speed bonus together with all your pyromancy attack speed and your rapid. So if I do that real quick. Oh, and don't forget, you might also need to use the elixir. So 54.1 plus 20 from Moonrise. And this already includes the elixir. And then I have 30 from Rapid. I have 13.3 from Amulet. 10.9 from Weapon. Plus 12.6 from Focus. And 10.9 from Ring. So I have a total of 153. And my guide recommends, with my amount of CDR and Flame Shield duration, it recommends at least 127.8, so I am above that, and I am immortal. Let's go kill Duriel. Yeah, another thing while you're playing, make sure you don't use teleport like the regular teleport. You want to only use the Wade teleport, because otherwise your Hectic can proc on this teleport instead of your flame shield, and that'll make it so you don't get flame shield back in time. The second thing is, make sure you're always casting firebolts. That's why you want to be moving around only with a Wade and not be running around, because while you're running, you're not casting. So you want to be always casting, only move with the Wade. Drop one fireball, cast through it, and don't spam fireball, because when you cast other things, you're not casting firebolt, and then also won't proc Hectic in time, and you won't get the flame shield back in time. Just to show you that I still have the same gear equipped, gonna kill this guy. Don't need to worry about using fireball yet. Yeah, it's gonna take some time because my damage is very low, but we'll be able to do it as long as we keep refreshing Flame Shield. Oh, I let Flame Shield drop and protecting saved me. You also want to get up close to whatever you're hitting, so that you shotgun the boss. But I mean, you hit the target with all three of your split fireballs. And there we go. We did it. Now obviously the damage is very low still, but that's where you can, keep improving your gear and eventually your Masterworking ranks, and you will end up doing a lot more damage than I am right now. In the next video we're going to be looking at what it will take to equip Raiment to be able to speed up, especially pit farming by a lot. So if you like this video, please like and consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.